Good night, everybody. Good night. There's some feedback there. Yes, good night, everyone. Kimar Short here, and welcome to Alternate Views. I want to say, as usual, how happy I am to be here with you. Yet another evening on Alternate Views. Welcome to the show. So far, we have 55 persons online. So I want to say uh, thank the early patrons and viewers of the show. Again, my name is Kimar Stewart, and today is the 2nd of May, uh, 2024. So welcome to Alternate Views. So let me go straight to the comments and say hello to our early set of patrons. David, and the name is just David. uh, David is saying, good evening, Kimar and fellow patriots. Looking forward to hearing the real truth about the economy. I got Mr. Ford is in tonight. Uh, we'll see. Good evening, Kimar. This is from Cecilia Miller. Good evening to you. Being Drake, my brother from the city of Bridgetown. Welcome to the show. Good evening to you, Wayne, and good evening to Betty. Wayne is saying at 6:30 p.m. that early birds get the best seats. So Wayne has a front row seat to Alternate Views. And good evening, Wayne. I even saw Wayne today reposting some of the photos from Alternate Views, the cruise that we had last year on the bank holiday of Heroes Day in celebration of our national heroes and some of the work they would have contributed to the socio and economic landscape of the country. We decided to throw a party cruise that persons in and around Bridgetown and all of Barbados could have sailed along the coast of Barbados, seeing the beautiful beach and cruising across the smooth seas, our blue pristine waters. We had some style of performances from Stiffy Star Quality, and we had some DJs. We had some great entertainment. So Wayne was there along with many other persons, you know. So hoping that we could throw another event. Hoping that we can throw another event. Just give me 1 second here. Let me rectify quickly. I don't phone anybody. Go ahead. Go ahead. Sorry about that. Just trying to rectify some things with the technical persons behind. But yes, so we had Alternative Views of Cruise. Wayne was there. I had a quite enjoyable time. We're going to throw another event that we could come together and socialize and party in the midst of learning and in the midst of gaining new perspectives, economic perspectives, social perspectives, legal perspectives. We do take a time to socialize as well. So for our next event, we'll be out marketing early so that we could all socialize when the time comes. So Mr. Maximus, good evening to you. Welcome to the show. Victoria's Queen, welcome to the show. Good evening to you, Mr. Tennyson Driggs, hailing from the St. Michael Southeast branch, represented in the house. Welcome, Tennyson, and I'm sure Tennyson is representing his political candidate in the race, who's Pedro Shepherd. Yes, so Tennyson is representing for his people, my people as well too. So good evening to you. Patrick Green, Good night to you. We're climbing nicely. Uh, 101 persons so far this evening on Alternate Views. We'll be having some discussion on the Barbados economy. You know how we usually do it. So we're going to have a rather informative show for you as usual. Rivera's. Welcome to Alternate Views. Good night. Adrian Bascom. Good night to you. Good night to Pierre. Good night to Shirley Clark. Shirley, welcome to the show. Welcome. Thank you all. Jump on in, guys. Michael Jilts, Sean Cool, Tyrone Green, Cynthia Mon, Pauline Maynard, Peter King. Welcome. Sonia Perch, Marcia, good night to you. Marietta Ford, Randy Ford Griffith. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Good night to you all. Good night to you all. Jump in here. We're in Austin. I'm seeing you here as well. Thank you again for tuning in. Every Thursday, Alternate Views. We were just about to get into the discussion, but we were welcoming our patrons, our viewers, as we always pay our due respects to uh, our patrons, because we make the show, we drive the show, the viewers drive the show, and I always pay my respect. My loyal patrons who will tune on here every Thursday. No, let me just get in a yeah. So just let me fix this name tag here quickly, and yeah, that will be there. Yes. So this evening, what are we going to discuss on alternate views? As was advertised on the platform, we're going to discuss a bit about the Governor of the Central Bank's report. However, before we jump right into the discussion, we are seeing some early comments. So let me address some of these early comments before we jump in. Adrian Bascom, ADG, welcome, American writer. Good night to you. Adrian Bascom is saying, I also asked on brass stats, is it Chinese land or the government has control of the land? Kimar, please, can a black man own a piece of land in China? Good night, Marion Griffith. Good night to you and Stephen. Thank you for tuning in. Welcome to the show. Charlene is saying one does not have to be a governor to know how to manage finance. That is true. Adrian Bascom asks about the Chinese, if the land is government owned land or Chinese. Well, you have to tell us, because I honestly did not hear the process program today. So you have to inform everybody on Alternate Views what was the response to that. So, as I was saying, Barbados as a country and the economy is in a rather precarious situation at this time. As we all know, Barbados as an economy is a monocrop economy where we rely on one area really and truly as our main income earner. And we all know that main income earner is tourism, right? So many people, interested onlookers, myself, even the man on the ground, the sanitation worker, the vendor who sells in the van stand, the fishermen, people who scale the fish, right? The average man always questions in his or her mind, why do we as a country continue to depend on tourism, as when COVID hit, it was proof to all Barbadians, even economists abroad, even the International Monetary Fund, even the persons at the World Bank, um, even independent analysts, we all came to the same conclusion that we cannot continue to focus on tourism, because as COVID hit, the tourists stopped coming. Tourism was on a halt. Flights were grounded. Boats were docked. So therefore, tourism activity dropped in Barbados. But we still survived as a country. So it shows the resilience of Barbados. But it also demolished the myth that tourists coming because we survived. We found a way to survive. Okay. So with that being said, I wanted to look and quote from a book by Bishop Andre Thomas. And this book speaks to, or the quote I'm going to read from, speaks to the law of national signature products, right? National signature products. And this all ties into the central report and exactly what I'm going to speak to as it relates to the comments of the governor of the central bank and what would have been reported in the publication. Now, it says here that products, and Bishop Thomas goes on to say that every nation has distinctive products that, when discovered and developed, will bring prosperity and distinction in the League of Nations. Right? So a nation that has not discovered, developed, and become distinguished in the trade of signature products will not experience economic dignity. Every nation has innate value. However, every nation has manifested the fullness of its value in the family of nations. And this is because for a nation to manifest its value, this is for every nation. So it goes on to say, because this is getting interesting, and I hope you're listening, how interesting this quote is. The quote goes on to say, however, it takes transformational leadership to develop a nation that adds value rather than existing to perpetually beg other donor nations. So I hope that quote has some profound impact on all of us tonight, because it sounds like Barbados, right? It sounds like Barbados. So let me repeat that once again. It says here that a nation that has not discovered, developed, and become distinguished in the trade of signature products will not experience economic dignity. So what is Barbados' signature product on the world economy or in the global sphere that gives us a strategic advantage over other countries who has, like in Jamaica, resources, like in Guyana, resources? What is giving Barbados a strategic advantage? What is giving us income? right? What do we export to the external world that is valuable to them, that they will come to us with valuable foreign exchange to buy it? If anybody could answer that for me, I wouldn't entertain it, right? So what is Barbados' signature product? Some herald it as tourism, and you heard in the governor of the central bank's report, Dr. Kevin Greenidge, he was constantly referencing a resurgence in tourism, a buoyant tourism performance, right? But we saw during COVID how fragile tourism was and still is. Right? So what can we offer to the world as a signature product that will give Barbados some value, right? So I'm asking you that, viewers, because we're all not Barbadian on here. So I'm asking you, viewers, to give me an opinion. Right? So we often like to reference countries and how these countries rose from being beggar nations to achieving economic growth. Now, if you look at Barbados's debt levels and increasing debt, you could classify Barbados as a beggar nation, right? We are still classified as a beggar nation, still dependent on the incomes of non-nationals, meaning the tourists, to suffice the country, right? So when you focus on the tourism numbers, and by any extension, you can get more tourists coming into a country than the actual population of it. That is very possible, and it happens, right? So the income from the tourists is valuable, yes, but we're still borrowing debt. And again, let's just say there's another pandemic hitting, or let's just say that the drying up of the Panama Canal and the impact of ships coming to Barbados again, or there's a crisis in terms of jet fuel, and airplanes can't move from where Barbados is back to square one. And during COVID, you remember that we had to borrow substantial amounts of money from the International Monetary Fund, the ADB, the Chinese government, to be able to run Barbados. Right? So the taxation levels that the government collects of the wider Barbadian population now, is not enough, really and truly, to continue to manage the lifestyle of Barbadians in terms of, when I say lifestyle, I mean free healthcare, free universal education, uh, provision of roads, uh, subsidize utilities to a point, and those I call them, what's the word I'm looking for? Those are privileges that many other Caribbean countries don't enjoy. Many big countries don't enjoy. At the end of the world, because of our ability to educate our population. So the investment in education is one of the key principles which is keeping the Barbadian economy up and functioning. Right? So many big companies around the world would fly in or bring the business to Barbados to allow Barbadian employees to run the businesses, or Barbadian employees do tend to run companies efficiently and profitable. because of our levels of education and attainment, professional qualifications, and right. So that is attractive. That is what draws these big companies to Barbados. Right. So the education that exists within the population and the ability to attract jobs from in terms of foreign investment, the provision of foreign investment with like essentially lead to the jobs, because we can see that government policy does not facilitate entrepreneurship in a way that it can suffice to be or the backbone or the driving force of a new pillar of development. So we focus on education, with primary education free, secondary education free, university education free, right? In Jamaica, education is not free. See? And remember that Jamaica was one of the countries who experienced the IMF program, experienced currency devaluation through the IMF program and the rigors of going through the program and meeting the different conditionalities. Right? So Barbados is basically at the beginner stages of Jamaica's IMF experience. And we can also look at Trinidad's IMF experience and Guyana's IMF experience. These are all countries with currencies that have been devalued. But the thing they all have over Barbados is that they have oil, they have resources, they have bauxite, they have forestry, they have fisheries, right? Gold, right? Diamonds. So these resources allow these countries, although they had currency devaluations, to still be able to get income afloat. But Barbados, no. Right? And this is the alternate view of what was presented by the governor. So I giving you my synopsis up front, and when I start to speak about and reference what the governor said, then it will all come together. Okay. So Barbados, a country dependent on tourism, right? We all know how fragile it is. Barbados, a country dependent on tourism and foreign debt, right? And foreign debt, right? With no resources but the education of its people, right? So Barbados does not have oil. Barbados has no resources other than its land and its resources and its water resources. Right? So as you can see, the new IMF Resilience and Sustainability Fund, which references climate change, focuses heavily on the management of Barbados's water resources, and hence why there's a $600 million plan being rolled out to build water reclamation plants and use reclaimed water in various ways to replenish the drinking water aquifers, right? So all of this is part of the IMF program. So the plan to to implement the water reclamation project and put the sewage, clean the sewage water and put it back in the drinking water. All of these are policies that were rolled through the IMF Resilience and Sustainability Fund to be able to monetize, all resources of a country, be it scarce or not, right? So even sewage water has become a resource for Barbados. Sewage water has become a resource. Sewage water is being monetized, right? So I hope you're getting the point that I am making here, as to the precariousness of the situation that Barbados is in. Right? So let me I want to go over to some of what the governor was saying. Right? Um, let's give me a time. Let me get that up for you on my screen so that you can see exactly what I am saying or have been saying, really. There's Marcia cutting in on the YouTube. Right. So I'm looking for a quote from Alternate Views. And this quote, this book was written in February, just after the election, published, sorry, just after the, but the quote is still very much relevant to the ongoing situation in Barbados. So you have constant reports from the governor of the central bank. It is much of the same, or the repetition of the same rhetoric, because the rigors of the IMF program continues to control Barbados. So at page 191 of Alternate Views, I would have mentioned that in the latest outlook for the Barbados economy by the central bank governor of Barbados governor, he has stated this at the time when we were on lockdowns during COVID, that we need to avoid any further lockdowns at all costs. And with his declaration that the Barbados economy being in a recession for more than a year, that there are additional facts that Barbados was already in a recession before COVID. So Barbados economy declined for 8 consecutive periods before COVID, right? So there was no growth in the Barbados economy up to the point of COVID, right? So since May 2018, the Barbados economy declined every quarter for 8 consecutive quarters. And these facts can be referenced straight from the central bank reports, straight from 2018 up until COVID 2020. So Alternate View says, as part of the BERT continued expenditure program, as part of BERT, continued expenditure, which means government spending, right, will be needed to resize the loss of revenue associated at the time when the country was being locked down, when persons were unemployed, when businesses were being closed, on top of the fact that we had an already existing unemployment crisis in Barbados. So we had high unemployment before COVID, and when COVID hit, we had a further deepening of the unemployment crisis, right? We even had wage cuts going on in the private sector, where one particular hotel cut the wages of workers by 15%, right? So I went on to say, given all of those circumstances, right, that the cost of running the government of Barbados is a problem, and it will continue to be a problem regardless of what predictions the governor of the central bank would predict. So he is predicting growth, projecting growth, while the IMF and the World Bank and these other institutions have downgraded Barbados's growth forecast for the future. Right? So the growth projections of Dr. Kevin Greenidge is contrary and goes against the growth projections that the IMF and those other institutions reported on Barbados. Right? So I hope you remember on the show that I showed you documentation to prove where there were differences in the reporting of the IMF as compared to differences in what the government of Barbados was reporting. Right? So, as I was saying about that, the cost of the government of Barbados is still high. It was still high during COVID, and it's still high right now. Right? So, despite the reports from Dr. Kevin Greenidge, they neglect to interject that the budget of Barbados is heavily supported by policy loans, and the governor mentioned it in his presentation that the government still has quite a bit of policy loans from the IMF factored into the budget. Right? Because the governor reported that we have a fiscal deficit of $1.7 billion. Right? So how can we have a deficit so wide? Right? So Dr. Kevin Greenidge is reporting that the government achieved a primary surplus, right? And a primary surplus, again, as you know, would be what the government spends versus what the government makes, right? So the government earned, according to Dr. Kevin Greenidge, 400 and some plus more revenue that was spent. So they basically earned a profit of 400 and some million dollars, according to Dr. Kevin Greenidge. That's the primary balance and the primary surplus. He went on to say something about a fiscal deficit. And the fiscal deficit is when you add on interest payments, where you got to pay back to IMF and you got to pay back to who you borrow from internationally and locally too, right? So when you factor in debt payments into there, the government of Barbados has a hole, you hear what I said, a hole of $1.7 billion that we have to finance. Right? So he said that, right? He said that. And I want to get the clip that I can play for you. That he says that Barbados has a hole to fill of $1.7 billion in deficit. Right? And I'm trying to get that clip here for you so that it soaks into the mind what was said yesterday. Right? So while I get that up for you, right? While I get that up for you, I'm going to continue reading from alternate views. My interjection at the time was still heavily supported by foreign-based policy loans from the IDB, the IMF, the European Investment Bank, to help fill that deficit, to help fill that hole. Right? So how do you fill that hole? The government has to borrow. Right? So the government is borrowing debt internationally, policy-based loans to fill the deficit. They're trying to rekindle the local market. Remember, they're trying to borrow money through the BOSS program. They're trying to borrow money through the central bank bonds. They're trying to reissue treasury bills. They're trying to do a few things to rekindle confidence with local investors. But this is after local investors were hurt by the debt restructuring, right? That they were hurt by the debt restructuring. So they're trying to rekindle that confidence because we have a $1.7 billion hole in deficit on our books, reported by the governor of the central bank. Right? And we have to fill that by borrowing. So I went on to say alternate views that the borrowing of this debt from the IMF artificially allows the government to cook its books. Because if the IMF continues to lend us money, then we will never understand the true state of Barbados' economy because being propped up by borrowing. So if we draw back and not borrow, how will we survive? How will our fortunes fare? Right? So the government is not willing to risk drawing back from the IMF because when you have the IMF finances on your books, it increases, it makes you look good, right? So you fill your deficit with policy-based loans and you try to borrow the rest locally from the banks and the credit unions. But remember, they destroyed it. They destroyed that confidence. So they're struggling to raise the financing. Hence why the government constantly goes back and borrows more money from the IMF because they fail to meet the targets or revenues from local investors because the markets are still destroyed. So when they can't raise the money locally from the banks and the credit unions and from treasury bills, they don't have to go back to the IMF for top up because they fall short of the targets, or they will have to look to increase taxation. Right. So you remember the Prime Minister saying that there may be no new taxes, but you forgot that the Prime Minister said that there will be increases in the current ones. Right? She said that there will be increases in the current ones. So the increases in the current taxation is to fill the hole that exists in Barbados' finances via that deficit that Dr. Kevin Greenidge mentioned, that $1.7 billion hole that Dr. Kevin Greenidge mentioned, that has to be filled. Right? So that is what Barbados is facing, regardless of what I would call pretty pictures are painted in terms of our representations from the government. So the main concern there is that the absence of earned revenue, which means that Barbados is not earning its way, it's borrowing its way, where the money that we continue to spend is unsustainable because we're spending the money without providing the means and ways as to how we're going to get paid back. And as the governor of the central bank was saying at the time, and as the governor of the central bank is saying no, because remember, I'm reading from a 2022 publication. So if the money the problem still exists because Dr. Kevin Greenidge is repeating the same thing now. So the main concern, and as noted by the governor of the central bank, more support from international financial banks will be needed this year to maintain the high levels of expenses. Right? So that is the problem that Barbados still faces, that we have to borrow continuously to maintain the levels of expenditure, levels of money that government spend. Because remember, we run deficits. Right? So the second concern in all of this is the continued elevation of foreign debt in the face of a tourism sector, which in my opinion needs restructuring. Right? We still have situations where oil prices continue to fluctuate, and Barbados has no strong export base to earn foreign exchange. So therefore, when we continue to rack up all of this foreign debt, tourism can pay back. But tourism can hardly support Barbados. And tourism is the main contributor. But if tourism is only doing so much, new means and ways to earn foreign exchange is what is missing from the report of the government of the central bank. So until we get some facts, some information, some structures put in place with the assistance of the central bank as to how Barbados will be earning foreign exchange to earn its keep, to repay the IMF and to repay all of these foreign debts that we're relying on, then I think that we can hear the same story every year, right? So it is inevitable that a perpetual borrowing relationship with the IMF will engulf Barbados, as we are on the way to being engulfed. And as I said earlier, Barbados cannot exist today without the borrowings of the IMF. And the foreign reserves that the governor spoke about today that are so high are all propped up by foreign debt. Which means that Barbados has no foreign exchange of its earnings. We don't earn it. So our account is not filled with earnings. Our account is filled with loans disguised as foreign reserves. Loans disguised as foreign reserves. And remember, we have to be paying surcharge fees, as was put in the newspaper. We have to be paying increased interest costs. Because remember, the loans jumped from 1% to it was 400%. The loans jumped, according to the Prime Minister of Barbados at Congress. Right? So, do you see the dilemma that we are facing in Barbados? So we are in an inevitable relationship, a borrowing relationship, which means that we cannot do without the IMF. The IMF cannot do us. We are them and them are us. They are we. The IMF is no Barbadian, hence why it has established its office inside the Central Bank of Barbados. Because the IMF will be here for some time. So the governor of the central bank and the central bank can report some statistics, but if those statistics are at variance with the IMF, then we need to have some care for concern. Yeah, so we really don't have any foreign reserves. So let me pause for a moment and let me acknowledge some of the comments. So far we are 274 persons. I want to remind you to like the show. Send out to all your friends. Send out to your family. Let persons know that we are on alternate views and we are streaming live. So please come on to the show. I am trying to send the link out further to a wider audience so that we can have more interaction on the show. So don't forget to hit share. Don't forget to hit like. No, we are at 274 of you. So let me check out some of the comments coming in on the Spain. It's a very fiery comments tonight. Yes, 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 yes. Woo. Yeah, so I'm gonna try to answer some of these questions here in the comments quickly, and then we're gonna get back to the the report and the governor, etc. Right, but so far, um, well, the comments are coming in fast and furious tonight. We have Queen McQueeness, like to you, trying to get back to the top one. Right, so I can't get back to all, but the Clayton Vaughn, hi, Marcia. Right, so I'm gonna start here. Square 4 is saying good night, Kimar. Glad that you're on. Good night to you, Square 4. Good night to you, Tyrone Nurse. Welcome to the show. Hurricane Rita is agreeing with me and saying that tourism is very fragile and prone to sudden external shocks, which is true, and COVID proved that. Marcia is saying that as far as I can see, there's nothing substantial we have to offer, and I agree. How is the income from tourist measured? That is a very interesting question, Pierre, and we're going to answer that or try to answer that in part of the governor's presentation when we hear it. Marcia is saying that the Panama Canal has dried up from what I hear. I also heard that too. Hurricane Rita is saying any given Sunday, you win or lose a ball game, any day tourism could lose tourists. Then what? Yes, then what? Agriculture was the only sector to grow in Barbados during COVID, and it was completely ignored and neglected after, to my surprise. Marcia is saying best jobs are offered to outsiders. Land is either sold, leased, or given away. Seems to be true. Hurricane Rita is saying Marcia, they are working on a fix. Bear in mind the Chinese CPP, that's Chinese Communist Party, may own Panama Canal. They invested a lot of funds there. Marcia is saying in response, sad hurricane. So then it's back to square one. Vihoy is saying we have to develop our own resources. That is true. Marcia says, so who's benefiting from all those resources? Certainly not the citizens. Adrian X is saying good night to you, Adrian X. Marietta Ford is saying that most countries that experience IMF draconian measures do not offer free education. And that is true, you know. And hence why Barbados is reforming its education system, because we're headed to a more privately funded and oriented education system. And it started, and it's going to start in the school. So that is why they're suggesting removing the 11 plus, and then you're going to hear that we're going to have cutbacks in the education budget. And as I said in Jamaica, people have to pay to go to school. Right? So that is exactly why Barbados is going through education reform, because part of the IMF program is to reduce central government's outlook to be funding a large education budget, because we have to look for the resources to pay back the IMF, and hence education will be impacted. So this comment by Marietta is a fact. Right? So Barbadians need to pay attention to the education reform, because education on the IMF program is an investment decision. So in having to choose between getting back their IMF money and funding free education for Barbadians, the IMF requires to have its money back first. So therefore the budgets will be cut. So if you see the government keep pushing it and pushing it and pushing it and pushing education reform far out, it's not because they don't have an idea what they want to do. They know exactly what they have to do. But the impact of the education reform is going to shape the core of Barbados' economy and society, the households of Barbados, and the people. Because the education budget is now under the knife, or we call the austerity, the painful measures, the bitter pill that are associated with economic reforms and IMF austere programs. Right? So, Marietta got me to go on. But Fair Australian is saying, is it fair to wonder if the current governor of the central bank is still an IMF operative, even though his salary is now being paid by the people of Barbados? This is the thing, right? Although you work at the IMF, that does not substantiate your integrity. The IMF is an institution, much like how we have people who work in the commercial banks, and the banks enact some level of robbery on the people. We have people who work in the credit unions, they too do their fair share. But that does not speak to the integrity of the people. So I don't want to color a man's integrity because he worked at the IMF, right? You have to look at the decision that he makes while in office, and then that will determine his integrity, right? That would then determine his or her integrity, because we have many Barbadians who work at the IMF of good character. I know a few, right? So that is a ticklish area, but I do understand the question that you're putting, in that if his integrity could be compromised in terms of implementing agendas that does not suit the economy of Barbados. So I do understand the question, but just give me a play on that one, okay? So we have Joyanne Fifth saying good night. Asking persons to stop calling the line while I'm on the show, please. Send messages, please do not call. Thank you. Marcia. Sorry, Janine Motley. Good night. Marcia was telling me to call it what it is. Sorry. Okay, so Tyrannos is saying the only resource Barbados has is the PM leading up a road that has us and children as slaves to pay back that debt. A borrower is slave to the lender. Well, this is how countries become enslaved to much larger countries through debt policies. Right? So when you have governments who live above the means and have larger appetites than the resources they have around, then they tend to overborrow and drive the countries into deep debt and require the citizens to be overtaxed and overworked to be able to be repaying debts for generations and generations. Here is saying the problem with our water supply is leaking pipes. That may be true, but it's deeper than that, I believe. It's a short take about the government central bank talking to the CBC last week. Said he promised to review the structure of commercial banking fees. Yeah, we did our show on the commercial banking sector in Barbados. Adrian, that's saying they can't get rainwater do properly and want to monetize sewage. Get out of here. I was looking to tap root the billions of dollars in the green economy and climate change crowd. I am sure they know climate change is a political hoax and fear elitist philosophy is just about money. Yeah, that is interesting. Well, Janitha Calendar. Saying stay safe. Thank you. Bihoy is saying so the educated illiterates need to know what is happening in their water is a suspect. Read. Good night to you, Erskine Watson. Good night. Don't forget to like the show, guys. Like the show. There are 290 of you on here. So let us have 290 likes at least. Um, keep saying it. Right. So in the meantime, but there are too many comments for me to go through here, guys. So I try to get a few on, to have you here, but there are too many. Some of us taking this jobby water lightly, but when the water started to come through your pipes with a stink, and when it's really needed, everyone will run out the house. But then bottled water will be fully on sale. And the if you heard the Prime Minister of Barbados saying that the Barbados Water Authority will be investing in a bottled water project. So the commercialization of water is going to be pushed heavily in the Barbados economy because subsidized water to the masses is no longer sustainable according to projections and according to reports coming out from the officials and the management of the water authority. The is saying the central bank is projecting what someone tells him to say. So Pierre said, if you have a bucket with a hole, the more you pour into the bucket, the more the water leaks. Our problem in the water is not the supply of water, not the supply of more water, is the capacity to reduce the leaking water. That is a very interesting observation. Um, Somebody is saying why place the blame on the pandemic solely is a falsehood. Square 4 is saying that the governor of the central bank will not issue a set of guidelines in respect of framing the space of fees and charges which will apply. He said banks in Barbados are making millions in profit. And we said that on alternate views when we had our show on the banking sector. Square 4. So thank you for that interesting observation. Emerson Bob is saying Barbados has more than Bermuda, Cayman Islands, and most of the other Caribbean islands yet find itself in a very bad position because of recent poor management of the economy, corruption, etc. Pete Way, good evening to you, Pete Way, Remeem. Hello, Remeem and Pete Way. Remeem has a comment, and Remeem is saying these try to bury blessing circles because they want a stranglehold on how black Bajans money gets used. Many families got relief before Greenidge and Strawn did their fear campaign. Whoa. Marietta is saying they're laying with statistics, a lot of manipulation. Somebody's saying he's giving alternate facts. Where did the profit come from? Someone cooking the books. That is fake news. Yes, sorry, had a glitch. I don't know what happened. But yes, Hurricane Red is saying the math is not real. It's pretend math. Can we pretend to pay a back? Whoa. It's pretend math. Whoa, that was a funny one. Yes. So as we go on here, as we gotta get back on track, guys. You've had some people asking about helicopters and stuff. Right. Let me tell you, since our article today which listed uh the top 20 countries indebted to China, ranging from 2.9 billion to 29 billion. I wonder if we're trying to join that club. 4 more subscribers to reach 700 subscribers. Thank you, Marvin Marius. Just subscribe, just like. Someone has said, I am annoyed to see the government paying IMF millions in surcharge. How were they caught in that financial quagmire? That's a very interesting observation. Um, yes, you guys are asking me a lot about the Chinese. Wait. Um, the Chinese offered the government over 400. Whoa. Yes, guys. So we try to having some very rigorous discussion in the comments. Um, yes. So we're gonna backtrack to the presentation now, and I want to show you some clips, really, about this mythical growth that we are experiencing in the Barbados economy, because we are not seeing any new sectors, emergent sectors. We are not seeing any investment in current sectors, which will be driving sectoral growth. And we are not seeing or experiencing benefits of growth, uh, as was referenced in the report. So let us hear some of that report today. So just be patient with me and my
Yes, guys. So sorry about that temporary break. We had a glitch as I was trying to bring the video up. I don't know what happened there. That is strange. So let us try to get that video up now and see the outcome.
yes, yes, guys.
Yes.
So in the
Yes,
meantime,
guys.
I
So in the
am
meantime, I am
getting this
getting
video
the
up
video
and
up
running.
and running. Here
Here
we
we
find that I
find that
am
I am
getting a
getting a
challenge.
challenge.
This.
With this.
Okay, so it seems like it doesn't want us to put up this video for whatever reason. Um, but we're gonna still trade. So you can see my screen. I'm going to hit play now.
in reflecting the strength in the economy. Non-performing loans remain pretty much as they were before at very low levels, and the banks and the banking system remain quite adequate in terms of capital ratio. So that's the general overview. I'll take you into the details now, edge down further. And this unemployment is at the end of December 2023 from 8.4 to 7.9%. For the first quarter, we recorded a current account surplus, and that's where our are trying.
Now, my people, I hope that you can see my screen perfectly. It says here economic growth of 4.1%. So in your estimation, how did the Barbados economy grow? Where did the Barbados economy grow? Which sector did the Barbados economy grow from? Right. Later in the in the governor's presentation, he mentions that a resurgent tourism is the reason for this surge in economic growth. If you remember, tourism tanked to an all-time low in Barbados. So tourism is just recovering from the distance it went down. But tourism has not outgrown its previous performance. So therefore, how can you ascertain that you had growth? So alternative viewers, in your estimation, you tell me, how has tourism in Barbados grown? Did you feel the benefits of it? Those persons who have rental properties, were your properties filled with tenants? Are the restaurants along the coast making record level profits? Are the hotels making record level profits with full occupancies? Are the vendors the craftsmen, the people who work in tourism, the people who are looking for jobs in tourism? Right? So I am saying here to you, alternate viewers, show me the massive expansions in hotel properties. We have these SAMLARs, but that you know how that goes. The SAMLARs has not been functioning according to the much publicized hype. The Hyatt still has not gone up. A lot of the promised hotel projects have not gone up. So show me how has tourism expanded in terms of growth, much to the benefit of Barbados, You need to start calling it growth and call it a recovery. So that is my point of view. Also on the screen here, you can see the foreign reserves at 3.3 billion. We already discussed that those foreign reserves are really foreign loans disguised as reserves. The primary surplus, we explained that earlier in the show, that the government is earning more revenue than expenses. So that is what we are seeing. That is what we're experiencing. And what we are seeing and what we experience is a direct contradiction in the reports coming out from the government and the central bank. Right. So you can tell me, viewers, in your opinion, let's look at the unemployment figures, which is right here in this corner, right? Right here in this corner here.
Transactions to the rest of the world, and that compares to the deficit in the first quarter of last year, again, reflecting the strength of the economy. On the banking side, non-performing loans remain pretty much as they were before at very low levels, and the banks and the banking system remain quite adequate in terms of capital adequacy ratio. So that's the general overview. I'll take you into the details now a bit. What drove the first quarter performance was an extraordinary performance, 228,828 tourists on island for the first quarter. That's the highest of on record any year, even surpassing the first quarter of 2019. In fact, from November last year, December, on record. And in fact, if I take you to the chart here, I'm just pointing out a few. For our first quarter, we had US market increasing by 47% on top of its performance thus far. We also have 21% increase in Canadian market, and all of this reflect increase the airlift capacity and intensify marketing efforts. In CARICOM countries, we had a 20% increase, and UK was basically flat. But as I said before, UK already surpassed its peak in the 2019, and in my view, that's now leveled out, and therefore that's still a very good performance. This 14.8%
of viewers. So it seems like the video is cutting my camera off, so we're gonna stop playing that video because I think you heard most of what were his highlights of the presentation. So we're gonna revert back to normal because this has jolted my camera. That is strange, bro, but let's keep going anyway. We always have backups and rolling. But yes, the last thing I dealt with was unemployment. Right. So Mervyn, he said that the tourism arrivals has surpassed the highest that were on record, right? He said that, yeah, it was the highest on record. So in terms of arrivals, but because tourists come, that don't mean that they're spending. That does not mean that arrivals equal to spend. We know that cruise ship arrivals can artificially increase tourism numbers. We know that tourists regularly come here on cruise ships, get off, come through Bridgetown, walk about, and then they don't buy anything, they get back on the ship and they go. And we count that into our arrivals. We also count transfers, people who do transfer layover flights into arrivals, right? So there are means and ways at which you can artificially increase tourism arrival numbers. And I could bet that if I do some further research, if I do some further research, if I do some further research about how this new way of measuring tourism statistics, according to the governor, I could bet you that they are employing new means and measures to measure tourism arrivals. So, as I was speaking about this unemployment issue, I want to ask you, the viewers,
To ask you, did you experience job growth in any sector? Did you experience job growth in any sector? Was there job growth in construction? Maybe. Was there job growth in agriculture? Was there job growth? Was, was there job growth in fisheries? Was there job growth in international business? Okay. Tell me where there was job growth in any sector in Barbados. Right? Even the Kaduma bands are pulling out. So show me in which sector, right? Are we gonna get we're gonna get overly technical with this one, right? Are we gonna go on the central bank's website, right? Are we gonna look at areas, all of the areas in which the Central Bank of Barbados measures economic performance, right? We're gonna look at it, and you can tell me for yourself as a Barbadian who's living here, if you have experienced potential sectors, which would then determine if there has been an increase in jobs that would then determine a lower unemployment figure. Right? Because as far as I know, so many young Barbadian people sending home people under the IMF program. So explain to me how you sending home people but unemployment is still going down. I don't mean no. I mean, help me, alternative viewers, help me. How is it that
Yes. People are having some horrible connectivity issues. So we're having the backup system functioning because the connectivity is
Connectivity
horrible.
is horrible.
Yes, so as I was saying, I am waiting. I am waiting. I want anybody on the alternative views, all any 300 and all 335 persons who are on here tonight, can anybody point where we experience this job growth in the sector or any sector really? If there has been buoyant economic activity, explain to me why then, right? The local banks and the credit unions and the insurance firms and the private banks like JP Morgan Chase and even Caribbean investors were not running to snap up Barbadian government debt. Right? Explain to me why investors are not lining up to buy government debt, to buy government paper. Right? Explain that to me. Because if Barbados was offering great returns on investment, countries all over the world will be buying up Barbadian treasury bills because the government would have the leeway to be able to repay the debt. But they don't. Hence why investors are not buying Barbadian denominated debt because it's not viable, it offers nothing, there's no substantial return. And if you look at the economic growth figures, right, anything below 3% is what economists refer to as negligible growth. Right? Negligible growth, anything below 3%. Which means that you ain't really grow per se. But they're saying that if you get technical with it, that extra 1.3, which brought us to 4.3 total growth that they reported or so, right? You had a recovery, right? So you're recovering. Like God, we keep repeating that you're not growing, you're recovering, you're catching back your breath, but it's still not back to the point you're at. And I'm very sorry the system is sticking. I can't even get my presentation up to show you from the reports from the central bank, which would have quoted some figures directly from the report so that you understand. So I hope so far that you are enjoying this discussion, although although we're having some challenges, we're still pulling through. Right. So I'm going to try to take some of your questions, but I hope the information that I presented tonight would dispel any notions that you may have regarding the report and the figures that are put out there reported by the government. Well, not really the government, but the central bank. Right? So let me just acknowledge some persons on here. I'm seeing Adrian Hines. Good night, Adrian. I haven't seen you on for a while. Maronette is saying free education at all levels for developing countries is essential. Is essentially regarded as an overstepping goal, not supposed to be. But we do have it in Barbados, so essentially that is why it is under attack. Right. Yes. Right. Square 4 is saying Kimar said on this show. Kimar, he said this coming on the heels of your show that the banking sector in on the banking sector in Barbados, that you say the banks in Barbados are charging all kinds of fees and not giving any interest. Yes, it did say that. Ooh, scrolling through. Right. Somebody says soon and very soon we are going to be seeing Barbados will be going after 500 million. I don't know if the Chinese gave us 500 billion. I don't think that is correct. Mervyn Morris is saying, congratulations to Alternate Views. We are at 700 subscribers. So thank you all very much for subscribing to Alternate Views. We are at 700 subscribers. So thank you very much, Mervyn Morris, for bringing that to my attention. And as was discussed, again, my other feed is gone. So this is definitely saying to me that somebody is giving me some problems. Yes, so as I was saying here, Square 4 is saying that Kimario Show has helped the central bank to speed up the process of which Bajans can look forward to getting back interest on their money soon. Hopefully, alternate views should take a bow. Guys, thank you for that. Vihoy is saying mythical growth like unicorn, that kind of make believe. Marvin Morris is saying 5 million to IMF in surcharges. 5 million to IMF in surcharges, that is a big leak. Adrian is saying percentages can be tricky. If I have 100% and I spent 10% last month, I made back 10% this month. That is 99% in real terms. Kimura, I asked this question already and I don't think I got an answer. If all of these countries dump in the US dollar and our money tied to it with all this debt, where does that leave us? It does not impact us immediately. It may be better for us in a way. Being tied to them, if they dump it, we could be seeking to get it, to earn it, to help pay down our debts and get out of that trap. That's how you look at it. And Adrian is saying so that 4% growth can still be in the negative range. Yes. Remember, you had loss, and in economic terms or in life terms, if you lost something as fragile or as real economy or so you don't ever recoup. Businesses close down, people move out, so you don't ever recoup all that you had before. So when you lose and you start to regain, you still have to regain to the point that you actually recapture everything that you had before and more. We are not at that point as yet. We are still trying to recapture some of what we lost. Right? So that is the answer to Adrian's question about the 4% being in a negative growth range. Right. So somebody saying that I am echoing. Is that true? Can I Mr. Echoing? Or can you hear me clearly? Between the devil and the deep blue sea, Barbados better join BRICS. Well, we're joining the BRICS. That means that we have to form closer relationships. You have to have closer relationships with China and Russia. And I saw some comments earlier from persons who are concerned about Barbados' relationship with China. I have a very pragmatic view on Barbados' relationship on China, by the way. but I'm going to explain it to you fully in soon, right? But I'd like to hear your views on it. So if we join BRICS, that means we are partnering with Russia, China, India, South Africa. So are you open to working with Russia and China? That is the question that will follow if you are asking Barbados to sign on to BRICS. Hey. So Hurricane Rita was asking if a surplus based on earnings and production or on loans. This surplus is based on taxation. Taxation. Right? So the garbage and sewage tax, the taxes on tourism, and I explained all of these taxes that were put on us in the mini budget, an extra $300 million worth of taxation, right? Because we were running surpluses as far back as 2007 under the former Minister of Finance, Mr. Sinclair. And when the government changed, the government added on another 300 or 3%, 300, which was at that time roughly $300 million. But the Barbados economy was worth about $10 billion at the time. So the government came in and added on 3% or another $300 million worth of taxation in the mini budget and the budget put together. And that brought the primary surplus to 6.5%. So it was not the current administration or the current Minister of Finance that brought the Barbados economy to 6.5%. The former Minister of Finance, Mr. Sinclair, is the one who achieved a constant primary surplus of 3.5%. And then the current Minister of Finance, Mia Motley, would have added on $300 million or 3% worth of GDP at the time, a taxation. And that taxation came in the garbage tax, say, it came in the tourism levies, it came in the fuel tax, it came in the hotel departure tax, it came in the health service contribution, it came in increases in VAT, it increases in corporation tax, increases in the Amazon tax, increases in income taxes. So all of those measures would have added up to approximately 300 million. So the plan was to run this 6.5% surplus and this high level of taxation and make these surpluses, and these surpluses would have gone to paying down the debt that the government owes, so you don't go borrow no more money or try to cut down the money, and help to fund projects, to help build roads and help in capital investment and other stuff. But COVID hit, so they had to change the targets. Right? But the level of taxation still exists because remember they did not repeal, the government did not repeal any of the taxes. Right? So we still have the high level of taxation existing, which would have given us the 6.5% primary IMF surplus target. We still have that level of taxation in place, right? We still have it in place, and that's why the government is raking in so much tax revenues and giving them a primary surplus. So that primary surplus is coming from your taxes. And I just explained it to you. The additional taxes that were put on is how the government is meeting that primary surplus target, along with privatization of state-owned corporations, along with, reducing other expenditures, like cutting back education, cutting back health, cutting back on water, cutting back on. So all the cutbacks will give you savings. All these expenditure cuts will give you savings. Closing down corporations, right? So that is how the government is achieving it. So that, in simple terms, that is the basic explanation for what Dr. Greenidge is speaking about when he talks about this primary surplus. So there you have it. Right? So what was pronounced as rocket science is not rocket science. So anybody that watched this show tonight can go and challenge Dr. Greenidge's perspective and challenge his report based off the information that was shared here on Alternate Views tonight. Right? So there you have it, people. My own perspective on the Barbados economy at this point is that we still exist chronic problems. And you know what's a chronic problem? Diabetes, cancer, AIDS, diseases that are hard to cure. Barbados has some chronic problems. And that chronic problems is an ability to earn foreign exchange and earn surpluses. And Barbados has to borrow substantial foreign exchange to continue to maintain the appetite that the government of Barbados, and I mean just the BLP, talking about BD, talking government, because government is a continuum. So this is government straight from Barrow time straight until today, or what I like to call the independence economy. Right? So the old independence economy, the old colonial economy, right? It's under restructuring. And the old means and ways, and you see Barbados is now gone republic, and hence where you see the pivot over to China. So once upon a time, England was sending out majority of our tourists, and we depended heavily on England for income and Europe for tourism, but that's not so anymore. Barbados is pursuing new ventures, new emergent ventures, and in partnership with the Caribbean Progress Studies Institute, we'll be doing a lot of work in terms of making Barbadians aware of the new and emergent trends happening as it relates to global affairs and Barbados, as it relates to the Chinese investment, the Belt and Road Initiative of the Chinese, of which Barbados is a signatory to, which we signed on to in February 2019. And hence why you're seeing an increased presence of Chinese investment coming into Barbados, because the Chinese are filling a very pivotal hole as it relates to bilateral financing and providing foreign exchange into the Barbados economy to fill specific holes. There's no other country in the world that has the level of foreign exchange surplus. Every Chinese is not up there at number 1, 2, or 3. They're very close. They have the foreign exchange to go around the world lending foreign governments money to help fill deficits in budgets. Right? So Chinese financing has been filling holes, and Chinese investment has been filling holes in the deficit that the governor of the central bank, Kevin Greenidge, has been speaking about. So if you don't borrow from the Chinese, there's no other country that is lending us that level of money, or willing, or has the access to lend us that level of money. So if we don't borrow from them, then we have to possibly increase taxation. Then we probably have to make cuts to that magnitude. Then we may have to go and beg the IMF and the thing for a top up. But then that changes the entire conversation, because the Chinese lends for capital projects, right? And the Chinese provides a strategic advantage as it relates to bilateral lending, and which the government of Barbados is using to facilitate its development agenda. So that is where you can see the agricultural project that I spoke about on the Marseille show at Hope. That is where you can see investment in the Scotland district. That is where you can see the Sam Lords. That's where you can see the Upland Race project. That's where you can see donations of medical equipment to the hospital. Because Barbados is seeking to further and deepen ties with China, who is a big industrial country, and which Barbados imports significant amounts of its inputs. And when I mean inputs, almost everything we use, cell phones, even the toothbrush, TVs, all the technologies, cars, are imported directly from China. So China is a very large trading partner of Barbados, and Barbados, through the Belt and Road Initiative, is seeking to utilize, capitalize, whatever word you want to use, by furthering deeper ties with China as a country, because most countries, even the big USA imports a lot from China. Even significant amounts of treasury bills are owned, American treasuries are owned by China. So many countries around the world are indebted to China. See Sri Lanka. We know that some countries do fall in the Chinese debt trap. Right? So Barbados is following suit according to world trends in terms of utilizing Chinese investment. And like I always say, I do not blame the Chinese for having the money to invest. I blame governments for taking the monies and not having a strategic plan to be able to repay those people without losing any of the country's assets or endangering any of the country's important lands or rights or access to critical or national areas that other countries we saw lost in terms of making the gamble. So that's where my problem lies. Because if it's not the Chinese lending, it will be some other country lending. And if your lending conditions exist on every type of loan, nobody will give you free money. So conditions exist on every type of loan. So I keep saying I don't blame the Chinese for investing, but the leaders of countries need to have a vision that if they're going to enter into arrangements with those, they need to have a structured vision as to how they're going to pay back and not expose Barbados to situations where they lose highways and roadways. So, for example, the $400 million in investment that was given to Barbados to build roads and to develop the Scotland district. What is to stop a situation from occurring where the government is hit with a pandemic or a situation and they don't have the money to repay the Chinese? And similar to what is happening in Jamaica, tolls are put on Barbadian roads and the Barbadian populace and tourists alike then have to pay tolls to drive on the roads. Like what is happening in Jamaica? Do you know Jamaica have a toll system and you have to pay to drive on certain roads in Jamaica? Because there's no, like a hotel, if you build a hotel and the government's default, then you can take up the hotel. But if you build roads and you default, they will take up the roads, but they can't carry the roads anyway, and it won't make sense to destroy them. So what they do, charge the population tolls to drive on them so that they. So I'm not against borrowing, right? I'm not against borrowing. We borrow to do the roads, yes. But what buffers do we have? What backup do we have that would stop the country from being exposed to the risk of situations like what I just explained earlier? It is the risks associated, right? So there's a big risk associated with borrowing from the IMF. There is a big risk associated with borrowing from Chinese. There's a big risk associated with borrowing from anybody. Right? There are big risks. So we don't have the resources. We don't have the resources to suffice. So we have to take the risk. Right? So this calls for some revolutionary thinking in terms of how we can restructure the Barbados economy. Right? We need to have a plan as to how we're going to restructure the Barbados economy away from the old monocrop, European style, English visitor type economy and expand our reach on the other shores. Now, this is, I have to give the government of Barbados credit for this now. Attempting to expand the diplomatic reach of Barbados. Right? So usually the foreign minister of Barbados is usually tasked with this responsibility, and this responsibility, Barbados, since the government change, we had a couple of foreign ministers, and we had embassies being established in Dubai. We had embassies being established across further Africa. We had further embassies established across South America. So these are things that make me happy if these embassies produce results. So as opposed to just sending ambassadors abroad, right? As opposed to just sending ambassadors abroad, you give the ambassadors a mandate to attract a specific level of foreign direct investment per tenure. So after your 5-year or whatever year, you should have to bring businesses and create economic opportunities for Barbados as part of your diplomatic responsibilities. We have so many diplomats, right? And that diplomatic economy, and you can see you heard that term on Alternative Views first, the diplomatic economy, right? Where we focus specifically on our foreign affairs, and when our diplomats leave here, when they go into these other countries, they should be looking for economic opportunities for Barbados and Barbadians. Right? That is my suggestion. That is my solution. Right? So if we can tap into the diplomatic ambassadors, I don't know how many we have, but I suspect it's more than 100. We could be able to create another stream of foreign income, and our government officers will be responsible for doing that. Yes, we appointed a governor to the ambassador, sorry, to the metaverse. I don't know how I feel about that, but yes. So as I was saying about the diplomatic economy, and I must give the government credit for this part again. The former governor of the central bank, Dr. Clevister Haynes, he was appointed as the ambassador for Barbados to Ireland. Right? To Ireland. So if he can as former governor of the central bank, going into Ireland, who has a very solid financial economy going, and at some point in time we're going to do a show on the Irish economy. Right? If he can utilize his skills as a former governor to create economic opportunities and ties with Ireland and Barbados and the further Scotland and Wales and those further European economic synergies, and you can tie those relationships, then Barbados is on its way. Right? Pillars of foreign exchange. Right? We can have billions of dollars of earnings through a sector development of a sector like that. Right? Because we can attract these big national multinational corporations and allow our educated Barbadians who we pay to educate to the UE level to have some work. Barbadians can work locally, and somebody spoke about the metaverse. Barbadians can work locally and deploy their skills to these big multinational corporations through our diplomatic corps. Right? And there will be no need to be borrowing excessively from countries when you can engage in direct engagement and find opportunities to earn income through people who we employ as opposed to hiring additional consultants. Additional consultants to be able to do the work. So I hope you have some feedback on that idea. You can tell me if it is a good idea or if it is not workable. Your feedback is what drives me. Right? Your feedback is what drives me on alternate views. So every diplomatic economy can be tasked to bring in at least a quarter of foreign direct investment based off their missions, and I use the former governor of central bank, Kevin Haynes, and he's been appointed to Ireland. And I think Barbados will be on its way. So what is your feedback? Right? Is that an alternate view you would have liked to hear from the governor of the central bank in his report about new innovative ideas as to how we can restructure the Barbados economy to re-engineer growth in a solid way that the people do feel the benefits, re-engineer the economy that we no longer have to practice the trickle-down economy, but you're mobilizing the public sector without creating additional layers of expenditure in terms of hiring consultants and giving the work to private contractors, but you engage the public sector and allow the pie to reach direct to the public sector and therefore trickle down through the public sector and trickle further into society. So we need more of this type of innovative ideas, and it is my belief that that at the end of the day, we will continue to hear the same rhetoric from, even if we have a new governor of the central bank tomorrow, he will come and say the same exact thing that every governor will come and say every year. And that is so because we are not restructuring the old independence colonial economy away from the traditional areas in which we depended on to suffice from, as I said, Barrow time, independence time, under this time. So the Republic, in my opinion, should have been the birth of a new economic vision for the country, a republic where we built out new economic structures away from the old type of colonial practice and how we practice economics in the old colonial era. And the old colonial era was get a job, go to school, get a job, work in the supermarket, get CXC, struggle, go to BCC, struggle, get associate, struggle through university. When next to us, we have cultures of people like the Indians and the East Indians practicing alternate economic structures for their survival. So when COVID hit and the tourists were not coming, they had a level of resilience. They had a level of resilience and buffers to suffice their lifestyles that tourists or the lack of tourists did not impact on them. Right? The lack of tourists did not impact on them substantially, I should say. Right? So you call that recession-proof economics, where despite recessions and slumps in economic activity, that your fortunes may not be impacted severely. Right? So much so that during COVID, the East Indian community was out giving out packages, food packages and stuff to help in communities. They were able to provide a level of resilience to help Barbadians, and this is working Barbadians of all classes and creeds, even black professionals, the upper, they too were, during that time, they had to accept assistance because they too didn't have any work. So you see that the old economy is not as sustainable as they sold it to us, and we're going to have to reach in to other markets. Also, they're just waiting on the tourists and the tourist dollar. We may have to go to the tourists as opposed to waiting for them to come here and lay at Copacabana or lay at Savvy on the Bay or so, just to buy a couple margaritas and tacos on the beach and say, yeah, I enjoy sunset and sun and probably book a hotel, when majority of the bookings, the revenue does not even come into Barbados. Right? So you're holding on to a sector that's essentially bleeding you. So a visionary description of it is you holding on to a rope that's cutting your hand. So the more we hold on to tourism and the more we put our dependency on tourism, the cut is getting deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper. So it is time that the Barbados economy is restructured in a way that the great tourism has on it becomes loose and looser and more loose until Barbados can suffice, but we may never be able to get to the point that we totally exist without tourism. But at least we know if the tourists don't come for X amount of time, Barbados can still run, Barbadians can still eat, Barbadians can still earn an income. I saw it exist, and we see it exist in other communities in Barbados. Right? So that is my point of view. So to synopsis, the Barbados economy needs to be restructured. We need to look at building a republic type economy. And building a republic type economy means that we must admit some hard truths. Okay. And all of you viewers, all 407 of you on here, can firmly agree with me that when you listen to the governor of the central bank, Dr. Kevin Greenidge, on his report, that you were feeling completely unsure that what he was reporting was totally factual and that what he was reporting was giving you confidence as a Barbadian that the Barbados economy is back up and on the rise and being vibrant. I doubt it. All of you on here doubt it. If there's any man on this live tonight who is saying to me that he has full confidence that the Barbados economy has recovered and buoyant in agreement with Dr. Greenidge, say aye. Say aye. So they're repeating one thing, but the perception that exists on the ground upon the consumers, the people who drive the economic activity, there's a completely different narrative. Right? So it shows the great disconnect. There's a great disconnect in between the policymakers and the economic institutions who pronounce economic news. There's a great disconnect in what the people of the country are experiencing and feeling as compared to what the officials are reporting. Hurricane Writer is saying that he thinks the Nears have it. Motion carried. So the notion, or let me get in my economic jargon now, my hypothesis, right? My hypothesis, my economic hypothesis, was that the presentation did not inspire confidence that the economy was back. And we put that motion on the floor and we tested it at all corners, all turns, provided all types of synopsis, all types of ideals. We put it to the test 1,000 times. We stress tested it 1,000 times. And we found that we have nays on all fronts. We have 400 people here, so we have 400 no's. So to the officials that are watching the show, Alternate Views, you have 400 no's saying to you that the economic news that was reported on the performance of the Barbados economy, that it did not inspire confidence in them that the Barbados economy is back up, buoyant, and firing on all cylinders, and they have the confidence to support the policymakers of the day. Complete no's. So that divide that is occurring between the policymakers, which is the, I don't want to say government to politicize it, but the policymakers and the people of the country, is cause for great concern. The people can't be going one direction and the government or policymakers going another direction. You're looking for catastrophe, economic crash, right? And hence the reason why people are hoarding money, are not spending money. Hence the reason you cannot make the levels of revenue locally to finance that $1.7 billion deficit that Dr. Cameron spoke about. It's because the population does not have confidence in the economic reporting and the economic news coming out from the Ministry of Finance of Barbados through the central bank of the country, or therefore any of the other governing officials, meaning the substantive Minister of Finance, which is the Prime Minister, the Minister in the Ministry of Finance who also speaks on economic policy, or any other official, consultant or otherwise, who purports to represent the government of Barbados on economic issues. And anybody on my live tonight that disagrees with my position and disagrees with that position, challenge me on it. Say, Kimar, I do not agree with you. What you're saying is a fallacy. What you're saying is totally off base. So there goes the truth, the plain unvarnished truth as it relates to the Barbados economy. Right? And we're going to basically cap off right there and do a brief recap and conversation. As you know, we do usually wrap up at 9:30. So we have a couple of minutes to chat with each other. We have a couple of minutes to back and forth. You know, if there are any things in the presentation that you did not understand, or if there are anything in the presentation you want me to go over, I will do that. But please try to keep the questions within the scope of the conversation, because I don't want to go off on side topics. I want to keep it focused on what we discuss here tonight. And as we roll on, we can then get into other questions. Hey. So Aaron is saying Barbados economy hasn't grown since COVID. That is your experience, Aaron. That is your perception. That is your observation. And it is a very firm observation. But that is not what the government or central bank is reporting. That's not what the government is reporting. They're reporting growth, but you're not feeling or you're not experiencing that growth. So there's a disconnect between the chest thumping and the good news being pronounced as compared to what the people are feeling. So to have confidence, the people have to feel the confidence. The people have to feel the benefits of the economy. But our current political economy is structured to facilitate trickle-down economics, where we engage large capital owners and we give them tax cuts and tax subsidies and all types of legislative benefits, as opposed to spreading the pie around. Well, there's space for capital, and capital is essential, and the private sector should be leading growth. So I say should be leading growth. That's not the case. The private sectors are small developing economies, particularly Caribbean economies. They operate like welfare. So while we may look down on the poor or the working classes who may fall on hard times and have to go to the welfare, what do we call it when the big businesses turn to the governments for bailouts or turn to the governments for subsidies? Why don't we call it welfare then? And why don't we frown on it when they do it, but we frown on it when the working class and the poor go and get welfare? What's the difference? All two's government money, all two's subsidized living, right? So you see, even in economics, there's discrimination, right? So these type of social injustice that you see being perpetrated on small developing economies around the world stem from the fact that most economies were structured based on the trade. If you go and study back old economic history, and I heard the former Prime Minister of Barbados speaking to the different cities around the world that were strategically set up, and Barbados being part of the Commonwealth was one of those important points where most of our economic activity, there weren't many airplanes at that time, so it was boats. The city of Bridgetown was strategically set up, and we had a boating economy where most things came in on the boats, and Bridgetown was packed with people coming down to deal with those boats and those voyages coming in, and we gained substantial economic activity from that. We still practice that type of economics with a bit of an expansion with the air economy, which is the airplane economy. but we still practice the structure where we go to, or we assume that the wealth exists in certain sets of society, certain classes and creeds and colors of society. So we give them which are, and they're mainly the owners of capital. So we give them the access to then provide the trickle benefit. So then we want to educate the wider populace. We want to educate the wider populace to go and work for that capital at these different establishments. And that's how you got the emergence of trade unions and workers' rights and these other developments coming into the political economy of countries. Right. So, with that being said, and again, go back on this point, we need to restructure the old monocrop independence economy that Barbados survives on and draft a vision under a new republic, right? Under a new republic, which reconstructs the Barbados economy via the means of entrepreneurship, development of entrepreneurial class, and the direct engagement of the public service as the earner of foreign exchange in Barbados, in a country where, just give me 1 second, let me plug in my devices so that we stay alive. Sorry, right. So we're going to need to restructure our economy, as I was saying. And let me wrap up that comment with a quote from Alternate Views. Right. So for those persons who don't have a copy of Alternate Views, a lot of what I speak about is in here. Right. So I said in Alternate Views, in conclusion, this is the conclusion that I'm reading from the book. Right. So Alternate Views, the book. Alternate Views, the show. So for those persons who are tuning in for the first time, we have Alternate Views, the book. We have Alternate Views, the show. And we had Alternate Views, an event last year in the cruise, and we're going to continue to throw other events to help bring awareness in all type of ways. So in conclusion, I said here at page 207 on Alternate Views, all is not lost within a small economy like Barbados. And now is the time that the most innovative thinkers must come to the forefront, as the country is in need of all ideas which can lift us out of the economic stagnation that we find ourselves in as a country. This country, Barbados, has the infrastructure in place to be an internationally and globally competitive beacon, but we must ask ourselves some hard questions. How am I equipped to contribute to the future Barbados? What sacrifice, or what am I willing to sacrifice to exist in a future Republic of Barbados under a new restructured and re-engineered economy? What role will I and am I willing to play in a new Barbados? And what will I gain? Or what will I do with my new found wealth? The year 2050, which is 2050, 250 will be here. We're already at 2024. So that is just about 26 more years. Right? So that is about 26 more years. And when we're talking about planning, right? When we're talking about planning for a country's future, you have to think in terms of longevity. Right? You have to think about longevity. So when you're making economic and strategic plans for a country, timelines like 20 years, 30 years, 40 years, 50 years, 100 years have to be within your vision as a leader or potential leaders. Because we have to get away from making economic and political decisions based off a short-term nature or just to engender some type of false or public relations exercise and wasting government's resources. Right? So when we transfer our thinking to long-term thinking, we then get to understand what alternate views and the vision of alternate views is about, and try to assist and bring awareness to Barbados. So as I say here in my conclusion, that 2050 will be here shortly, and we cannot be found wanting when that time comes. And as a young progressive thinker, I will lay the groundwork for a new society, Barbados, in a plan.
For a new society,
In a plan that will ensure that the country of Barbados soars the skies of this globe as a champion and not a loser, and I dare say, and not a beggar. I'm gonna repeat that. I'm gonna repeat that part. As a young progressive thinker, I will lay the groundwork for a new society Barbados in a plan which will ensure that the country of Barbados soars the skies of the globe as a champion and not a loser / beggar. Right? Not a beggar. So here is the official call for all plans, all ideas, and all concepts to bring our beloved country, Barbados, up to the standards that we know that we can achieve. In this day of information, we have no excuse to be languishing in the doldrums, and we have every right to rise and take our place on the global and world stage. But unless private sources of income are injected into the local Barbados economy, massive voids will be left to plague the country due to the pulling back of government spending and the provision of the independence economy, i.e. provision of the social services economy, subsidized living, subsidized housing, subsidized roads, subsidized water. Basically, the government paying for every. That idea of economics for Barbadians is on its way out and facilitated by the policies of the current governing administration, and Barbadians need to wake up to the new realities that exist. That what we had and enjoyed before as Barbadians will no longer be provided to us in its current form based off the current trajectory that we're on with the IMF program, the 2 IMF programs, unless there's interjection. Unless there's interjection in the form of the political cycle and the administration is voted out and a new administration comes in to right size and change some of what is there. Right? Or unless some type of event occurs that disrupts the agenda, like a natural cause or something that happens to derail it, then we're going to have another serious discussion at that point. But I gave you the trajectory that Barbados is on and we will be heading, unless there's disruption in terms of the ballot box, because we do practice democracy, or by any other means within the law, I would hope. But other countries, like in Africa, they practice coups, and in Haiti they practice revolutions to be able to disrupt political agendas. In Barbados, we've taken on the form of marching, peaceful protests. Right? We've taken on the form of peaceful protests, but in other countries and just referencing what happens, not promoting any ideas as the best, but those are how political agendas can be disrupted. So it is my conclusion that renewed growth in the Barbados economy depends on removing a dense barrier of complex and old and antiquated government administrative processes, poorly performing government departments, agencies, and state-owned corporations, as I believe that the slow and antiquated way of government is part of the main reason that the economy of Barbados tends not to achieve the objectives that it sets out to achieve in terms of growth targets and other economic productions. And that was a quote taken from Dr. Delay Worrell, and I firmly agree with it, hence why I put it in alternate views. It went on to say that the reason for the slow implementation may vary, but it almost always relates to administrative failure in the public sector. And government needs to pursue new areas of development which can provide employment and foreign exchange. So you're seeing it coming back again in terms of the suggestion I put forward: employment and foreign exchange. There has been some talk about the diversification of agriculture, including the production of medicinal marijuana, but we all know how that experience went in Barbados, and it did not contribute anyway. So I suggested that the government of Barbados, and Colin Roach, should be listening to this, that the government of Barbados should seriously address the orange economy. And I'm going to say something, but there's not a promotion of anybody's political party, because I know how this thing goes. This is an economic show and not thing. But the orange economy is part of a broader vision which includes other economies: the green economy, the brown economy, the black economy, the white economy. There are many different economies. But one principle is the orange economy, and it focuses on intellectual property and the cultural arts. So despite making Rihanna, and I use the word parading because we parade Rihanna as a hero, despite parading Rihanna as a hero, there's little evidence to suggest that other young people in Barbados are being facilitated in a way, that they can make careers and facilitate wealth, like how Rihanna was able to facilitate wealth and to create an economic, well, not create, but to contribute to the economic facility of repatriation. So repatriation is like what the guy needs to come to Barbados, earn and save up all the money, send it back to Guyana. Like what the Barbadians do: go to America, go to England, go to Canada, earn, work, save up the money, send it back to Barbados. Right? So I say that there's little evidence, right, to support that government and government policy, because I keep going to repeat this. This is not an attack on a particular thing, but talking about government at large. Right? It's facilitating careers in this area. Now, there was some talk about a cultural industries bill, and the cultural industries bill was facilitated under the former Minister of Youth and Culture, I think that was Stephen Lashley, and I think the government was facilitating a studio. I think, but it needs to be broader. It needs to be encapsulated with a broader vision of trying to hook it into foreign exchange and schooling and educating our people to participate in the global market to further create repatriation of foreign exchange into Barbados, which should be tax free, by the way. Should be tax free back into Barbados, by the way. No taxes. So remove the foreign exchange tax, 2% tax, and remove the capital, but remove whatever foreign exchange tax. Right? I did mention the arts, cultural arts. I did mention the arts, and I mentioned intellectual property. So I said that a focus on the orange economy is critical at this stage, and no effort should be spared in its pursuit. And that was the end of alternate views in terms of its conclusion. Right? So yes, sports is in there, and the development of the sports economy is in there. Right? But sports is a whole nother conversation that I have to do an entire program on the sports economy and the underdevelopment of the sports economy in Barbados. Because we see the underperforming football, we see underperforming cricket, we see underperforming, well, swimming tends to do okay, but there's not enough to facilitate swimming in a way that is beneficial to the country. Right? So we train athletes, but we don't train athletes to go there and win gold medals. We just want to say Barbados was there. Look at the state of our football. Look at the state of our sports. Look at how we allowed road tennis to be hijacked. Look at how we allowed road tennis to be hijacked. Right? So I'm saying there's great scope. There's great scope. There's great scope for the reconstruction of the Barbados economy. And I got back as we're ready to leave. But there's great scope for the restructuring economy, and I provided a whole entire stretch of information that you can go and reference. You can write an entire manifesto out of the knowledge that was shared here tonight. Sorry, there's so many comments that I can't even dream to go back through all of them. But I want to thank you all for tuning in. I had a very good discussion. Solutions oriented, future oriented, not just the same old, same old. So I thank you guys. You know, your feedback is vital as always. Your feedback is vital as always. So just give me the thumbs up. Give me a, Kimari, I enjoy the show. Give me an exclamation mark. Something to show your approval. So the same way how we put it to the vote and Inez had it, I want to hear tonight from you guys if you enjoyed alternate views again tonight, and we want to find out if the yays have it. Yes. So Gal Biz, thank you for tuning on. Colin Roach, Dave Weeks, Lemuel Tull, thank you. Clay T, Chad Hazel, Fabian Yard. Good night, Fabian from St. John. What about Lemuel, Bali, Hurricane Writer? Says he wants to see Trump back in the house. What about Putin? Are you interested in working with Putin? Yes. So good night to Romeo Hinkson. Thanks for tuning in. Thank you guys. 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 Thank you to Marcia Weeks. Don't forget, guys, tune in tomorrow. Tune in tomorrow at 7 p.m. for the Marcia Weeks show. Always a very good discussion. So good night to Marcia Weeks, Caswell Franklin, Ferdinand Nichols, Rose Carbon, Heather Cole, Dave Weeks, and the entire crew from over on the Marcia Weeks show. Don't forget to tune in. Don't forget to support the planned protest against Barbados' cybercrime bill. Yeah. So thank you very much. Good night, Colin. Good night, Mervyn. Good night, Tracy, Peter, Judith, Ann, Clayty, Hurricane Writer, Simone Daniel, Aaron Hunt, Bali again, Hasbra, Marietta Ford. Thank you, Aisha Harding. Good night to you. Simone Daniel. Yes, good night to everybody. I had an excellent alternate views tonight. Vicky Bryan, Square 4. Pedro Gemma is saying Putin is the most sane leader right now. Yes. Colin, this statement is not true. This statement is not true. This statement that you said, Mr. Stewart, why are you so prejudiced against Russia and China? This is not true. This is not true. I only speak fact. I've never give you a definitive opinion on Russia, or I've never given you a definitive opinion on China. I speak open and pragmatic about these issues from a purely economic perspective. So I don't understand why you would make a statement suggesting that I was prejudiced against Russia and China. Have you heard prejudice? Well, certainly not my thing. Also, good night to Maxine McLean, and good night to any other person, David Waldron, right? David Waldron, Judith Fan. Good night to all of you. We are coming to the end of the show. We are over by 8 minutes, and we tend to keep discipline. So, good night to you all. Here is the end of Alternate Views. Have a good night. Tune in next week. I will see you guys later.